Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. Here I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger around the OAA, the host of Last Week Brain Cells, host of me Taramina on Orion Oden. Like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching on Orion Oden. A lot to talk about here on this week's podcast. We're going to recap the matchups from this week. We're going to preview the regional rounds. We're also going to talk about some football coaching news at Avondale. Also, we're going to talk some volleyball as well. Let's talk to our guest here today. And we got the coach of the Harper Woods Pioneers, Coach Oden. Coach, thank you for calling in this week.
Thanks for having me again, Sammy. Glad to be here.
When you look at this team, the path that this team's been on, and obviously the win at Clarkston, the win at Saline, you had some trouble at Mason. Talk about how those 3 games has impacted you guys, gotten you guys ready for this playoff run.
Well, those 3 games are all very quality opponents, traditional playoff teams. So we felt that it would help us immensely getting ready for the playoffs to play some tougher competition. Battling Clarkston and Saline, big Class A schools, was definitely a huge challenge for us. It made us better. And when it came to Mason, definitely a challenging game versus Mason as well, trying to overcome not only the team, but a couple nagging injuries we had in week 9. So we feel like we've kind of weathered the storm, and we're kind of prepared now. And we're not going to we're a little healthy going into the regional round.
And when you look at, of course, the playoff round, you guys really had no issue with Macomb, Lutheran North, and then Harper Woods, Chandler Park Academy. Talk about how important playing those reserves, the backups are, especially getting them that valuable experience.
It's huge, to build depth and be able to have some reserves that can give you some meaningful reps is ideal this time of year. Everybody has to play their best football because everybody that's left in the playoffs is really, really good. That's why they're still here. So the more guys you can get involved, the less wear and tear it is on your starters. You can kind of eliminate some two-way guys and get some meaningful reps for some young guys, which really helps us not only in this playoff run, but as we get ready to transition into next season as well.
And when you look at those young guys, and obviously we're going to talk about this more into the future, but talk about like any certain player, any young guys that the league, the OA Nation needs to know about heading into the future.
Probably offensively, we start 9 sophomores or freshmen on offense. We only have 2 seniors on offense. DeAndre Bidden, who is our H-back / wide receiver, he's a hell of an athlete. He has almost 2,000 all-purpose yards. He has a unique skill set to where he has great vision to run the ball for us, and he's our game breaker in terms of speed. But he also is an excellent route runner, so he does some things in the pass game for us as well. So he's been having a heck of a second half of the year from being in the backfield or in the slot at wide receiver. We also have gotten some very, very significant reps from defensive end and offensive tackle Jeremiah McCall, another sophomore that's been playing kind of above his level. He's drawn the tough assignments all week, the big offensive tackle from Clarkston, the big offensive tackle from Saline. He was the primary pass rusher and run fitter against both of those guys. One more rep than he lost, so I'm excited for the future for him as well. And then defensively, our free safety, another sophomore, which is Jaden Evans, is a ball hawk back there. He's been really helpful in the run support as well, and then special teams, he's a maverick. So those 3 sophomores are kind of playing, senior-type football right now. So they're definitely some of the reasons why we're having the success we're having.
And when you look at, of course, the success you've had, especially in this type of atmosphere in the playoffs, how important is playing home games on Beaconsfield? How important is that for you guys and for your program, playing your playoff games on Beaconsfield Street?
I think it's really important because, number one, you get to play in front of your fans, but you also get to eliminate the stresses that come with being the away team. You can control your arrival and departure times, the pregame meals. You can be a little bit more relaxed when you're at home, if that's a thing in the playoffs, if you're allowed to relax at all, I would say. But being at home gives us the opportunities to practice and perform on the same playing surface, which is huge this time of year.
And when you look at, of course, the postseason run, obviously Macomb, Lutheran, North, you had no issue there. And then, of course, Harper Woods, Chandler Park Academy. Obviously, that was talk about both those games. I mean, like, what did you see that was different from both those two teams?
Well, styles of play are really different, which is unique for us because we need to see as many different variations of offenses and defenses as we can because we're coming up on some teams that are really, really good at the things that they do. So against Lutheran North, you had a chance to defend some option football. We haven't seen that much, if at all, this year. So that was refreshing to watch, our defense perform and be able to play assignment-based football. And then with Chandler Park, you had to defend, another dual threat quarterback. The kid has a great ability to run, but he can also throw a little bit. So you had to be conscious of where he was at all times as well. So two conflicting styles of play. One was more spread option plus one RPO base, and then the other one was true triple option, really. So seeing multiple variations of offense helps us develop a more unique skill set going into the regionals and beyond.
And let's talk about this regional final. This is a rematch for you guys. District final last year, you guys took on Dearborn Divine Child. You won that one 40-21, but that game was a lot closer than the score indicated. Talk about, what you've seen on film with Dearborn Divine Child, and what are the keys for the Pioneers heading into that matchup?
Divine Child is a really, really good team. They're solid. They have some dynamic playmakers over there. They're a year older in the program. I think they were a little younger last year. We did pull away late in that game last year. I know they feel like they let one get away. So our goal this year is to leave no doubt, to go out there and make sure they get our best, 4 quarters of football. But in defending them, we got to eliminate the big play. Their defense has been elite all year. I think they have more than a handful of shutouts to their record. So our goal is to eliminate the big play, to cut the football, and keep, Marcello Vitti boxed up, but at the same time, be multiple and dynamic with our offense and make them defend every blade of grass out there. So we're excited about the matchup. We're looking forward to the matchup. We know that we'll get their best effort, and they should expect to get ours. It should be a really, really good game with two really great teams in it.
And then let's talk about the playmakers for Divine Child. Obviously, Marcelo Vici. Obviously, you guys seen him last year. I know that you've seen a lot of film on him. So talk about what Vici presents big challenges to you guys. Talk about what challenges he brings.
He has the ability to take a 6-yard run and turn it into a 60-yard run. He's a very dynamic running back. I think the difference for us is we see a dynamic running back every week, but eliminating his opportunities to move the chains and getting them behind the sticks and off schedule will be our goal. We plan on, putting a lot more pressure on the sophomore quarterback as well. He's been throwing the ball around the yard all season, doing great things. So we're hoping to be able to contain both of those. But Vitti is a Division I athlete. He does a great job of playing some wildcat quarterback as well. He can catch the ball out the backfield. He's fast, and he's tough running between the tackles. So he's kind of a Swiss Army knife for them, and we got to kind of try to slow him down.
And that sophomore quarterback talking about, of course, is Juice Sheridan. Of course, his older brother played at Michigan. Talk about what challenges that Sheridan presents to your defense.
Well, he's more of a pure drop back guy. I think he can make all the throws from in the pocket. I think this year he has a little bit more control of the offense. Last year we was able to confuse him some, and he threw us a couple interceptions. One was a pick six. So we're hoping to kind of rattle his cages again, give him some things he hasn't seen thus far this season, and throw some different coverages and pressures at him and see how he's able to operate under duress.
And when
He'll have to deliver the football under extreme duress this Saturday, so we're going to see if he can do it.
And when you look at, of course, obviously playing a game on a Saturday afternoon, talk about the differences in playing on a Saturday afternoon compared to playing on a Friday night.
Friday night is ideal because it's right after school. You guys are more relaxed. You can go from the door. You can control more things on a Friday. Saturday, you're worried about, whether the guys went to bed early or things like that, on a Friday night. Saturday's a little bit more unpredictable. Yes, you may get a little better weather, but oftentimes you have to make sure that your team is locked in and focused. And most teams are not equipped or ready to play an afternoon or early game. And knowing that the semifinals and the finals for Division IV are both around noon hour or 1 o'clock, we kind of move the regionals to kind of align ourselves with that, to try to get used to playing in a different time slot. So it's got its own set of, rewards as well as it would consequences, I guess. So we're looking forward to playing, during the daytime on a Saturday to hopefully help prepare us for what's coming down the line. Something we did in 2023, so it worked for us then, and we're going to try it again this year.
And when you look at a course, in Michigan, you always got to look at the weather. And, obviously it's a cold, it's chilly, and obviously it favors running game. Talk about the importance of having a strong elite running game to go along in case if the passing game is struggling. So talk about how important the weather plays in your game day preparation.
The weather plays a huge factor, being, as long as it's dry for us, we'll deal with the temperatures as best we can. But if it's dry, then we'll be great. But the key to winning in the playoffs is having a sound run game and playing lights out defense. Us having the ability to throw the ball just adds more icing to the cake. But you have to establish, win, and dominate the line of scrimmage to win later in the playoffs. You're playing in November, so you got to kind of change some of the things that you're used to doing. But ultimately, if you can get your run game going and you can continue to play very sound defense, you have a shot at winning a title every year.
And, of course, you look at that match. I mean, like, obviously, especially when the weather conditions, obviously, you look at your guys, obviously, with Nate at quarterback. You have Dakota at wide. Talk about, the key factors to the game coming up this weekend against Dearborn Devon Child.
Key factors for us is to stay on schedule, to be the best versions of ourselves, to not beat ourselves with penalties and get behind the sticks and have long yardage situations. We're trying to stay on schedule offensively. Defensively, we're trying to create havoc plays and disrupt the momentum and tempo of the opponent's game. So, and then special teams, we're just trying to be special. We've been able to have some really, really great success in the punt return and kick return game this year. So those things have allowed us to play what we call arena football. We're playing on a 60-yard field most games. So that's a distinct advantage when you can do those things. You're playing good defense. You're playing on a shortened field because your return game is working on both ends, and you want to kind of stay on schedule and not put your defense in situations where they got to be great. So we just want everybody to play, Harper Woods football, which is complementary to everything else going out there.
And if you win this game against Devon Child, you're either looking at Williamston or Goodrich. And, obviously I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I know that a couple of your guys, I know some of them might be thinking, if we can get this game against Devon Child, we might be staring at Goodrich. So how important is it to have your kids keep focused on this week and not look ahead?
It's extremely focused. We look at the playoffs, it's 5 one-week seasons. There is no look ahead for us. We have tunnel vision Our goal is to make sure our seniors get 7 more days of football. So we don't have long vision here in terms of the playoffs. Our undivided attention is given to the team that's on deck right now, which is Divine Child. We will deal with whoever is next once we secure a victory on Saturday. Both of those programs we've had run-ins with before. I had a chance to play against Williamston when I was at Crockett in 2012, and they beat me in the semifinal. And I know it's the same staff, and them guys do a hell of a job over there. And then Goodrich is Goodrich, so they're the champs, and in order to beat the champ, you got to beat the champ. So I think that'll be a very, very good district final matchup also. And whichever team comes out of that, we understand will be very prepared for what we have once we come out of our game. But, ultimately, we don't know or, have a favorite one way or the other and who comes out of the other side. We just need to take care of Saturday.
And you look at that matchup, I mean, obviously, as we talked about, that's not going to be an easy matchup, obviously. I mean, every time in November, it's not going to be easy at this type of, with the postseason ahead. So when you look at, and of course, you got a lot of other OAA games. I want to get your thoughts on them. You got Clarkson taking on Novi, Detroit Catholic Central, Adams against Romeo in Division I, and Groves and St. Clair Shores, Lakeview in Division II. So what is your thoughts on those three games for the OAA?
I got OAA pride. I'm pulling for all the OAA teams. I think that this league, top to bottom, is the best in the state. It prepares you for any possible playoff matchup. I know that Groves, I know that Clarkston, as well as Adams, are well prepared for what they have to face in the coming weeks because of the hard work that they had to put in during the regular season in our conference. So I don't know if they'll all be favored, but I'm expecting them all to grind it out and win a game late in the fourth quarter, most definitely. I think our league just prepares you for that from top to bottom. And I'm looking forward to potentially having 3 or 4, OAA teams in the semifinals next week.
Before I let you go, Coach, what do you think is going to be the key for Harper Woods to knock off Divine Child?
Winning the turnover battle and establishing dominance along the line of scrimmage. For every game for us, it's, winning in the trenches. Everybody look at the skills, and they're great on both sides. But the, least common denominators, what it's going to come down to is the Jimmies and Joes that play along the O&D line. Who can run their scheme the best up front will be victorious.
Harper Woods coach Rod Oden, thank you for calling in this week on the podcast. Wish you the best of luck this weekend against Dearborn Divine Child on Beaconsfield Street.
Thank you. Go Pioneers.
Yep. Okay, so when you look at Harper Woods, this is a team that's going to be an interesting matchup for sure. I mean, that's really going to be, I will be curious to see how offensively, the keys. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And Coach Owen said it on the boat. You know what I mean? It's going to be very interesting to see how that one goes between the Pioneers and the Falcons. It should be a really, really good game between those two teams. Let's go now from the Division 4 matchup. Let's talk the Division 2 matchup. This is Groves taking on St. Clair Shores Lakeview. And this game will be played on Friday night in St. Clair Shores, 7 p.m. kickoff. Jeremiah Whiteley's been the real deal here. And, what he did against Warren Mott, he exploded for 3 touchdowns. He's had 9 touchdowns this postseason tournament. So that says a lot about the Falcons, the way that this team's been. I mean, obviously, with Jeremiah making a name for himself, he's only a junior. And you look at, of course, last season, Groves had that 2-headed monster at running back with Sanders and I gotta remember the other one's name. It's on the tip of my head, but Jeremiah Whiteley's been playing really, really good football for Groves. He's been playing, and obviously he's been the main focal point for the Falcons this postseason. And, and now you're taking on a St. Clair Shores Lakeview team that just came off their first district championship. They knocked off Grosse Pointe South 24-7. They run a very complicated offense. So for viewers who watch us here on the podcast, I'm going to teach you guys what the wing T offense is. The wing T is basically, it's a double tight offense. It's sort of like a misdirection offense. And you really think about what the wing T does as, it's a misdirection offense, because the wing T, what it brings to the fold is you don't know who's getting the ball. You don't know who's throwing the ball. You don't know you don't know who's running the football. I mean, who knows? The quarterback could even go run with the football. It's a time possession offense to where you're going to have to, it's not like the veer or not like the triple option offense. It's sort of like a misdirectional offense. That's what the wing T brings. And that's the challenge that Coach Brendan Flaherty and the Falcons defense has to deal with the Huskies, is that wing T offense that is just, it's a very hard offense to stop. You got it. I mean, it's very difficult. So, they will run some gadget plays out of the wing T. I mean, and you look at the games that they won. I mean, the Utica-Eisenhower game, they had to survive that game, and then they had to knock out Port Huron Northern in the first round, 21-14. They beat Grosse Pointe South twice, both in Grosse Pointe. So, so this Lakeview team is battle tested. So Groves is going to definitely have their hands full against St. Clair Shores Lakeview, especially with that wing T offense that they run. I know some people call it the double T, the double tight, the T offense. Obviously, that's really what Groves is going to have to deal with. And the key is possessions. And Lakeview is a team that really wants to limit possessions. And really, that's where, for Groves in this game, they're going to have to really, really, when they get their possessions, they're going to have to score. You know what I mean? They're going to have to score, because, Lakeview wants to slow it down. If you're Groves, you want to speed them up, because you think about it with Groves, you get them sped up, that could be some problems, because, in a wing T offense, you don't want to throw in that offense, because basically with the wing T, you just want to run the ball. I mean, that's really what it is, if Groves can speed them up, if Groves can score more points, get out to a very strong start, get them out of that wing T formation, force them to throw, then that could be something. That could give the Huskies a lot of problems in that game. And I think, they have the athletes to do it. But I think the key is going to be possessions. I mean, Lakeview, their game plan is to limit the opposing teams' possessions. And if they do that, Groves is in trouble. If Groves cannot let them limit possessions, because if they do, that could spell trouble. So it'll be very interesting between the Falcons and the Huskies. And that one, of course, Lakeview's coming off the win against Grosse Pointe South District Final. Groves obviously coming off a big win against Warren Cousino, 36-22. Behind the play of Whiteley's 3 touchdowns. They had a pick 6 for a touchdown. The defense was solid, especially in that second half. So it's going to be very interesting between the Huskies and the Falcons over in St. Clair Shores. Now let's go on to Division I here, and we got some interesting games here in D1. We're going to go with Adams against Romeo. Of course, Adams coming off a 43-18 win in the district final against Stony Creek. Obviously, Ryland Waters played well. The offense played well. Obviously, Stony Creek, Stony Creek had a really nice year. I mean, next year, I expect Stony Creek to be back. The Cougars, they got a lot of talent coming back. I think Stony Creek's going to be back. And they're going to be, and I think next year could be a really dangerous year for Stony Creek. I really think they could have a really great year next year. But Stony Creek had a really nice one against Utica Eisenhower. In the first round, winning 35-31 in the first round in that one. Adams, of course, you know what I mean? When you look at them, Adams, the way they're playing their best football right now. And you look at, of course, what they did against Rochester, scoring on the first 5 possessions that game. Stony Creek, that was a little bit, that was very interesting, going for 2 most of the time against Stony Creek. So that's been a real interesting dynamic for Adams. Has been every time they score a touchdown, most of the time they go for 2. So that's been really, really interesting when you look at it with Adams. So when you look at this game against Romeo, of course, this is a rematch of a Week 1 game where Adams just basically devoured Romeo 39-7 on their home field. And then you look at Romeo now. Romeo's a completely different team than they've been all year. Of course, this is the team that won the MAC Red this year. You look at their playoff path right now. They came off a really tough 40-36 loss to Grand Blanc. Then they go in the playoffs. They had some big time issues with Sterling Heights Stevenson. End up surviving that one 14-13 at Dan Barnabo. Excuse me. And then what they did to Macomb, Dakota, which is absolutely nuts. They took at least 20 years of frustration out on Macomb, Dakota, winning that game 56-0. Could not believe that score. I still can't believe that score. How in the world do you think that, you think about it, is, 56-0, that's insane. Really insane. So you think about now with this rematch back at Adams, it's going to be interesting because it's a different styles game. Romeo's coming off a week where they just unleashed havoc on Macomb, Dakota. They had a pick 6 for a touchdown. They pressured their quarterback multiple times. They basically had their way with them. Adams, we know, is a team that loves to run the option. We know they got a quarterback. We know they got proven pass catchers. We know they got a running game. So this is going to be an interesting game. The key's up front between Adams and Romeo. That's the key. And that would be something. Whoever wins that game is either going to take on Saline or Detroit Cass Tech. Now, I know in the Grove segment, I forgot to mention in the Grove segment with Lakeview, the winner of that game is likely seeing either my co-host Ian Locke's Dexter Dreadnoughts or the Gibraltar Carlson. I think they're I got to figure out their nickname. I think they're either the Pirates or Marauders. I got to figure that out. But it's either Gibraltar Carlson or the Ian Locke Dreadnoughts. So let's go back to Adams. And whoever wins that game is either taking on Detroit Cass Tech or Saline. And that game could be a real interesting game because obviously Detroit Cass Tech, they haven't really been tested. They hammered Northville, and then they hammered Dearborn Fordson last week. And it wasn't close. They got 2 very good players, Detroit Cass Tech does. Saline, we know what they got with Tommy Carr, Lincoln Keys. They're big up front. And I think that game's in Saline. So that's going to make it interesting because and also what makes it interesting, Detroit Cass Tech has to go play on turf. And I know they played on turf this year prior to that in the Detroit Public School League. So That could be a real interesting game. People are going to ask me, like, who's your projections, Sammy? Who's your projection going to be in that game? Yeah, I really, in that game, I really like Saline that game because you think about it with them, you got to give, I like Saline that one because of the home field advantage. Also, Saline played a team that's similar to Detroit Cast Tech and Harper Woods. So, obviously we know we know Harper Woods. We know they got proven athletes. And I think Saline's going to learn the lessons from the Harper Woods game and use those lessons into the Detroit Cast Tech game. So, I got Saline in that one because of that, because of the teachings from Harper Woods. The teachings from Harper Woods to Saline, how to play Detroit Cast Tech. So, and it's eerily similar. I mean, Detroit Cast Tech is eerily similar. Very similar to Harper Woods. So, that'll be really interesting there. Adams Romeo, this is going to be a rematch, as I mentioned. It's going to be a fun one. We'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens, but that should be a really fun one on Friday night over at Adams. And then we got Clarkston taking on Novi, Detroit Catholic Central. Clarkson's coming off an impressive, 44-22 win against Grand Blanc. Hank Horgan had 2 touchdown passes. He had a big play for 70 yards. Alex Winchesko played well. Bowman Twins kind of had a little bit of a quiet night, honestly. Griffin caught a touchdown, but defensively, they were stout defensively, but you kind of thought, both Twins might have had a quiet night, and usually if the Bowman Twins have a quiet night when Clarkson's winning, that's usually a good thing. So, but they're going to be needed a lot in this game, especially against Novi Detroit Catholic Central. I was really impressed with Clarkson's defense, the way they shut down Jake Morrow and the high-octane Grand Blanc offense. Holding that offense to 22 points, I think that's the lowest they have scored all season long. And they really controlled the game. They really did. And their defense made timely plays, and you got to give their defense a lot of credit. This is going to be their gravest challenge, though. When you look at Clarkson, this is going to be their gravest challenge because you look at, of course, I think about you think about the 1992 Survivor Series, and you think about, and I remember that really well. Of course, you had, either 1991 Survivor Series, my bad. You had The Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan. That was called the gravest challenge for Hulk Hogan. He lost that match, though. This is why I call Clarkson Novi Detroit Catholic Central the gravest challenge for Clarkson. CC is big up front. They have a very good running back. They have a quarterback in Duke Blacken. They have the Gack brothers. Both of them are very good players, very talented players. They can play anywhere. CC really hasn't been tested. They really haven't been, and they play in in the toughest leagues in the state, which is the Catholic Central. They're legit. This team is legit. You look at this matchup and you say to yourself, yes, Clarkson's got a lot more they got more points than CC. That gave them a chance to host. But CC, they're big. They're huge. Their defense is good. They got a good rushing attack. They got a good, everything on that team is good. Everything on that team is good. So here's Clarkston. Clarkston's been one of the most consistent programs in the OAA. They themselves have played a tough schedule. Yes, they got one loss. That was the Harper Woods. Yes, CC is undefeated. But you got to look at the competition. That's the question. Clarkson's played a more tougher schedule. But now I'm not saying CC hasn't, but CC has played a tough schedule themselves. this is going to be a heck of a game. The question is going to be, is can Clarkson's lines, led by Hayden Flavin, can they push CC around? And can the Bowman twins get going this game? That's the key. And then can Clarkson's defense withstand against CC? They've done a pretty good job against Graham Lake and Davison. CC really has not been tested this postseason. They ran to Heartland, and then they blew out Brighton. Both those two teams heading into this game. The good news for Clarkson is this game's at home. This game's at home, and that's big. That is big. Having a home game is very important here for Clarkson. Because if they had to go to CC, that would spell big time trouble. The key is going to be is tempo. The key is going to be is grit and determination. Whoever has that will move on to either play Hudsonville or East Kentwood. Hudsonville, of course, knocked off Rockford. And then East Kentwood went into Howell and had to survive Howell. So whoever wins that game, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really, really interesting. Clarkson CC, that could be some fireworks. That could be some fireworks. Because everybody's been talking CC and Detroit Cass Tech. Everybody's been talking about them. All year, you look at all the media, everybody's saying it's going to be CC, Detroit Cass Tech. Why not Clarkston? Where's Clarkson in this conversation? Where's they at? I think if you look at it here, I think if you're Clarkston, you gotta look at the disrespect card. Because I don't think people in the media, because a lot of people in the media are probably going to pick CC over Clarkson. And yes, they got the line. Yes, they got the brothers. You know what I mean? But Clarkson's got their own set of brothers. They got an experienced offensive line. Their defense has been improving. They have a quarterback. I mean, you think about it. I mean, like, yeah, they got some well-known names. Clarkson does. But, you look at CC, they're like, you look at a team like CC, they recruit talent. And you look at Clarkson, they homegrown theirs. So, this is going to be a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a really good game. We'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens in that game. All right, now let's go from previewing those matchups. We're going to talk about the football coaching situation at Avondale. Of course, Jim Carlisle was let go at Avondale after a 1-8 season. Of course, Avondale allowed the second most points in school history this season, allowing 326 points. Offensively, it just really didn't mesh with the spread offense that Coach Carlisle wanted over there. And, I'll be curious to see what happens next at Avondale with the football situation over there. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Of course, that was it was reported after the podcast last week. With the news of Coach Carlisle being let go over at Avondale. So I'm curious to see what direction this team goes, what Avondale goes with, who takes over there, and can that program stabilize? And I think that's the big question going forward with Avondale is, can Avondale, can they find that right person to stabilize that program? And I think, it'll be interesting to see how Avondale does with their coaching search as we head into the offseason. So there's a lot of questions there with Avondale when it comes to their football program. What direction they go? I mean, that's the big time question. And how does he handle the lower levels, the middle school levels, the youth levels? There's so many questions there with Avondale. So we're going to keep an eye on that going forward. So that's something to really, really keep an eye on when you talk. I mean, like with the Avondale football coaching situation. Let's go now to some volleyball. I mean, obviously, we talk a lot of football here. We got to talk volleyball. I mean, there are a couple OAA teams that do remain that are in the regional rounds. You look at, of course, you look at Ferndale. Ferndale won their district against Hazel Park. They're going to be playing Detroit Vulgar. That winner's here taking on Detroit Lincoln King Academy or Harper Woods Chandler Park. Of course, Harper Woods Chandler Park Academy knocked off Harper Woods in 3. This is a regional. I think Ferndale's got a chance. I think they got a great chance to win this regional because, I think Ferndale's played a tougher schedule. Yes, they got by Ferndale University and then Hazel Park, but I think Ferndale, that region at Detroit Lincoln King Academy, it doesn't look as strong as people think it does. I mean, Detroit Vulgar had to survive in 5 games against Detroit Cesar Chavez Academy. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup. And I know Ferndale had to go play at Hazel Park, and they ended up winning that one. So it's interesting because I wrote a column on some of the toughest OA venues, and that goes with the Oxford question. So that'll be something to really talk about with them in a minute here. But for Ferndale, I think they got a great chance here to win their regional, maybe get to the quarterfinals. I think they got a great chance to do that. And you look at a powerhouse like Gilbert Devon Child, who's not in that region. Could they see him in the quarters? It's possible, but for Ferndale, this is a golden opportunity to make some big time noise and for them to really make headways heading into the final week of volleyball season, which is next week. Regionals are this week, so it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. So we're going to see how it goes. So it'll be interesting, really interesting. Then let's look at the regional over at Birmingham Marion. Groves really wasn't really battle tested in this district. It really was not. So you kind of think about with Groves, they got by A&T, and then they got by they got by Berkeley, and Berkeley Royal Oak. That was the first round game. Berkeley won that. Then they knocked off Oak Park, and then they met in the district final against and Groves and Berkeley met. Of course, Groves won that district. So now they move on to take on Grosse Pointe South, which that could be very, very interesting because you look at that matchup and you say to yourself, okay, this is a matchup where you kind of think with Groves, it makes this is where they get tested. This is where Groves gets tested because excuse me. Groves really wasn't tested in the district. They really was not that tested. So now you look at playing a Grosse Pointe South team that is a solid team. You know that it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes. I think that could be a really good game. I think that could be a really, really, and And then you look on the other side of that, you're possibly staring at. Actually, no, take it back. Groves is taking on Lakeview. So we're gonna get a preview of them in volleyball, and we're gonna get a preview of them in football. So Groves and Lakeview are basically playing each other in volleyball and in football. So Lakeview's coming out their first ever district crown, knocking off Warren Woods Tower. And then what Groves points out, they're actually playing Bloomfield Hills. So this is going to be interesting because Bloomfield Hills and Kayla Nabazi, if she's not Mrs. Volleyball in the state of Michigan this year, something's wrong. Because the performance she did against a proven Catholic League power in Birmingham Marion says a lot. She willed that team against Birmingham Marion in the district final. She willed that team. And for them to win that in 4 sets is incredible. Especially against a team that's coached by Maya Cook. We know how good Birmingham Marion is, the program. So you think about what Bloomfield Hills is. Bloomfield Hills, could this team be a state championship team? Maybe. Possible. I mean, if you have a driven player like Nawazi, and she's doing that type of stuff, then heck yeah, Bloomfield Hills is a state championship made team. I mean, you look at that region, looks very winnable for Bloomfield Hills. It really does. They could make a big time run here. Seriously, they could make a big time run. If Nabaji is not Miss Volleyball in the state of Michigan, something's wrong. That's what it is. And something's seriously wrong. And then let's look at Region 8 at Clarkston. I mean, Oxford is a team that we have to talk about. I mean, you look at Romeo. Romeo, of course, knocked off Stony Creek. Romeo knocked off Utica Eisenhower. And they knocked off Stony Creek. So they're in their Chippewa Valley, won a district championship, their first ever district title ever. And then you look at Macomb, Dakota, basically a young team, had to go through what they went through. Very young group as well. So let's talk about Oxford. We have to talk Oxford because they took advantage of home court. You take advantage of home court. Your best player is only a junior. You got a veteran team. You have a home court like Ian Smith. We know when that gym is packed, it can be very troublesome for a visiting team. And you look at what Oxford did against Lake Orion in the district semifinals. Lake Orion made a lot of unforced errors in that game. And Oxford took advantage. Oxford beat Lake Orion in 5 games. And then you kind of think about, okay, Oxford's going to go play Clarkston in the district final. You would think that Clarkston's a favorite coming in to that district. They have a North Carolina commit, Natalie Smith. And then Oxford just says, you know what? See if we can keep this magic going. And it looked like it was possible. It really did. You look at that in that Lake Orion game. Lake Orion was up 2-1. Oxford came back, won game 4, and then they won game 5. In the Clarkson game, you look at with Oxford. Oxford won the first game. Clarkson won the second. I think I got it mixed up. So I did. But then Oxford took a 2-1 lead. Clarkson went and blew out Oxford in game 4. And then game 5, Clarkson ended up winning 15-10. Or 15-12. So you kind of think about with Oxford, it's their first district championship since 2002. I mean, first you got to give that team a lot of credit. I mean, like, for believing in each other and believing in the system. And then especially, and you're going to have a lot of confidence, especially when you knock off 2 state powerhouses. Like they did. My question for Oxford is going to be is, can they sustain that success at another school? And they're going to Clarkston. You look at a team like Bloomfield Hills, who knocked off Birmingham Marion, denying them a trip to the regional on their home floor. Same thing with Oxford, denying Clarkson a trip to the regional on their home floor. So, you think about, I'll be very curious to see how both those two teams do. You look at that regional over at Clarkston, you would have to say Romeo has to be the favorite. Because they just knocked off Utica Eisenhower's ranked 7th in the state. You look at and you look at Oxford. Is Oxford playing with house money right now? That's the big question here. And they got Chippewa Valley, and Chippewa Valley looks very winnable for Oxford. Can they get to the regional? And if they win the regional, I think that might be the first time since 1997. Now, I'm not accurate about that, but it might be. Because I don't know when it was the last time Oxford won a regional in volleyball. So that's going to be, Oxford's is in a very interesting spot. And Oxford right now is an honorary member of Macomb County. And that'll be very interesting to see how that goes. Groves, you know what I mean? They're going to have to go through, Groves kind of that same boat. I mean, they're an honorary member of Macomb County. Them and Bloomfield Hills going up against 2 Macomb County teams. You look at Bloomfield Hills with Groves Point South and Groves with Lakeview. I mean, heck, Groves and Lakeview are going at it in volleyball and football. And then Ferndale, of course, going against Detroit Volger. They win that, they're either seeing Detroit Lincoln King Academy or Harper Woods Chandler Park. So Ferndale is an honorary member of Wayne County. So it'll be interesting to see how that volleyball aspect goes. I mean, you look at the volleyball aspect of it right now. Oxford's got a chance to win that region. They got to get by Romeo. Could Bloomfield Hills and Groves play one another? Possible. Very possible. I mean, Bloomfield Hills, I would have to say, is the early favorite in that region over at Birmingham Marion. And then, over at Detroit Lincoln King Academy, I have to say Ferndale's the favorite in that regional. Could you just imagine if all 4 teams in the OAA for volleyball made the state quarterfinals? Could an OAA team get to Kalamazoo? To get to the Deltaplex in Kazoo? It's possible. It is very possible. If there was a team in the OAA that I think has a great chance to go to Kalamazoo, to go to Battle Creek, my bad. What am I thinking about Deltaplex? What am I thinking? to get to Battle Creek. It's Bloomfield Hills. Bloomfield Hills, behind Alaki. If she plays like she did against Birmingham Marion and plays like a complete machine, then it would not surprise me if the Blackhawks are in the Final Four. That's how good of a player she is. So that is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on with volleyball. Is what teams can an OA team get to the Final Four? Can an OA team win a state championship? If they do, it would be the first state championship since Lake Orion did it. I think it was back in 2018. Which, Bloomfield Hills, they're more than capable of doing it. They pretty much are. They're more than capable. So we'll see what happens. Got regional semis. I think they start off on Tuesday. And then you have the regional finals, I think, around Thursday. And then you look at football, you got regional finals on Friday or Saturday for football. Then, of course, you have the state. You have the state finals. You have state quarterfinals on that Tuesday, Thursday, Friday of next week for volleyball. And then you have the state semifinals on Saturday. And then 2 weeks, we have the state finals for football. And then that's it for the fall season. And then we head into winter sports. We head into basketball season. I'll have a special on that for boys and girls basketball, previewing the seasons. They'll have their own separate podcast for that. So, a lot to look at as we head into the final few weeks of fall sports. Obviously, of course, we're keeping an eye on the football coaching situation at Avondale. A lot of questions linger. Can an OA team in volleyball win the state final? Can they win it? That's the big question. Can a OA team get to the state finals, get to Ford Field? There's a lot of worthy candidates that can really do some damage. We'll see. We'll see what happens. That we will. So when you look at the games here, things I'm keeping an eye on. CC and Clarkston's gonna be the styles. Ken Clarkson out tough nobody Detroit Catholic Central. That's what I'm looking for. That's why I'm keeping an eye closely on that one. Groves Lakeview. Can Groves handle the wing T? And then Adams Romeo. Can Adams perform the same way they did against Romeo the first time back in week 1? Harper Woods, Dearborn Devon Child. Can Harper Woods defensively contain Vici and Sheridan? That's the big question for football. And then volleyball. Can Bloomfield Hills make a run? Can Groves play spoiler? Can Oxford make a run? And can Ferndale make a run? You look at the regionals there. Every region there that has OA teams, it looks very winnable. And all the teams got favorable regional semifinals. When you look at the matchups, so you got Oxford taking on Chippewa Valley. You got Bloomfield Hills and Grosse Pointe South, and then you have Ferndale against Detroit Vulgar, and you have Groves against Lakeview, which that should be very, very interesting. We'll see what happens. All right, we're going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Saginaw-Bay-4050 at blogspot.com. Also, the OA Weebly website, around the OA at Weebly.com, for the latest information around the OA. All right, we're going to sign off here. Take care. God bless. Now, I'll see you on next week. Take care. God bless. God bless.